So this is the progression of the vision. Now, awareness can be defined as the implementer of the vision in its fullest sense. So what we really face as humans isn't a deterministic world that runs like a clock, that the past moves forward in an algorithmic or deterministic way. That is not the way the world works. The way the world works is that we face a vista of possibility that is not predictable. It's somewhat predictable, much like a musical composition. So it's guided by rules, but it's not predictable in a deterministic sense. And it's full of possibilities. That is actually its nature. It has potential in its very essence. And in order to optimize the quality of our interactions with that potential, we must first impose a vision on it and then pursue it. So when you conduct the future authoring program, you're trying to create a vision. So this is the first exercise. It's like, okay, here's the deal, all right? You get exactly what you need and want, possibly even better. If you treat yourself well, you can have all you need and want. So imagine, first and foremost, that you are treating yourself correctly because you genuinely cared about yourself, which is fine. Say, I don't. Okay, if you don't, how do you help someone? At the very least, you invite them to consider the notion. So imagine you didn't, that you are, that you could, but you tried. Consider, okay, I'm a worthwhile person maybe, and if I treated myself like I had intrinsic value, as if you were treating yourself like you loved someone, you might picture doing this for someone you genuinely cared about. Because most people care about someone other than themselves. So, can you recognize someone you care about? Yes, you can say because it tells you. It's as if you're not very good at caring for yourself, envision someone you care about and then pretend that you're bringing that mentality to bear on you with all of your flaws and shortcomings. I am not being. People find it difficult to be casual about this since they are so aware of their own inadequacies. It is difficult for us to take care of ourselves. Imagine that you should, could, and did take care of yourself. Just image it. So that opens up at least one door, right? Yeah. And then you say, well, in 5 years, you'll have what you want and need. What is it? So this is a deep question. So the question is this. Your life will be challenging, characterized by sorrow and tragedy in a variety of ways. Disappointment, obstacles, betrayal, and the full range of human catastrophes. That is definitely coming your way. Okay, so given that, and given that you want to live a life free of anger, bitterness, early aging, and undue suffering, and that you don't want to be a burden to others around you, what sacrifices would you have to make to shoulder that weight? Worthwhile. That's a difficult question. What justifies your suffering? If it isn't the case, how will I be happy? It's what excuses your pain. So ask yourself. You get what you want? What would your self-care routine be? Okay? So you spend 15 minutes writing about what your life would be like 5 years from now if you had everything you needed and wanted. Then we concretize it. I've had a lot of customers and students say, I don't know what to do with my life. What am I supposed to do with my life? And the first response is, that's not a very good question, because it's like, what do you want, a one real solution to what you should do with your life? Like, life is everything, and you want a one right answer for everything. Not a bad question. You can picture a nice future for yourself, but it helps to personalize it. One question you can have is, where do humans get meaning? And the answer is, well, in numerous locations. Here are some of the most common locations humans look for meaning. So if a customer came to me and said they were depressed, I would first ask, are you depressed, or do you simply have a miserable life, or a combination of the two? And you may be wondering what the difference is. That's a great question. If you're depressed and think you have a good life, yet you're suffering, what does that mean? Well, it means something different to various people, but you can sort of triangulate. Yes, you probably have an intimate relationship, or at least the possibility of one, so you want one, and you think you might be able to get one if you don't already have one, and you probably have a fantastic life. You've got some buddies, they're actually pals, right? You have some family members, such as children, parents, siblings, or both grandkids. You're nested within a family, and your ties with them are ideal. You have a job or a career, and if it's a job, it's difficult, and you probably wouldn't have chosen it as a vocation, but at the very least, you have good relationships with your coworkers, and you're doing something difficult but socially productive and useful, and it pays the bills. So that is nothing. You have completed or intend to complete your education to the degree of your intellectual capacity. You're taking care of yourself both emotionally and physically, and you have a plan in place to deal with signal, temptation, drug and alcohol abuse, sexual misconduct, and other issues. And then we added one more recently, at least conceptually, that you've taken on a certain level of social responsibility, correct? You're involved in the larger community in some way. And if you are not performing any of these, my life is pointless. Do you do any of these? No. So that is why it is pointless. These are the areas of meaning. So if you're unhappy and don't have any of those things, the first thing you should do as a cognitive behavioral therapist with someone is to say, how about we start with one of these things? You know you need some friends. You need to get out there and date. You need a job or a better job. You require an educational plan, such as you don't have a life, thus you're obviously miserable because life is nothing but tragedy without life and significance. And so your lot is misery. So we encourage folks to walk through these 8 distinct areas and say, okay, you can have what you want, but you have to aim for it. Sin, by the way, means missing the mark. It implies to miss your aim. That is what separates you from God. Missing the objective. What is the target? Yeah, right? What is the target? You must realize there is a target. Then you need to try to hit it, and maybe you don't even know where the target is, but your aim isn't good, but at least you've set up a target now and you can practice. So if you had an intimate connection, what would it be like if you had some friends? How would you prefer such friendships to be handled? Do you have a job or a career? What would it be like if you have everything you wanted? Some people find it more difficult than others to create a schedule. You might consider taking the personality test at understandmyself.com to determine what you're like. Maybe you are. If you have a low level of conscientiousness, creating a timetable and keeping to a routine will be challenging. But at the very least, this will help you comprehend some of the problem. Perhaps you have a high level of negative emotion or neuroticism and worry excessively, but setting a schedule does not prevent you from doing it. I would think the first thing to do is, there are 2 things you can do. First and foremost, consider why you want to create a timetable in the first place. So you discuss goals. So what do you want to accomplish? The future authoring program at selfauthoring.com. Another one of our websites assists users in developing a precise strategy for the future. As a result, you cannot truly have a calendar without a plan, since the things you schedule must be logically related. You want to achieve crucial goals for yourself. As a result, you must set vital goals for yourself and be aware of them. That's complicated, right? That is similar to having a life plan, so it's quite difficult. So that's why we created this exercise, it guides you through the process of deciding what you want and need. There's also a current authoring tool there that helps you identify your qualities and shortcomings. And part of your strategy can include capitalizing on those virtues and correcting those faults. So that could be an intriguing addition to the process. But in any case, you need to figure out what you want and then figure out how to break it down into actionable steps, right? And those are the types of activities you could include in your calendar. That would imply that your schedule would theoretically include things that maybe you don't want to do it, which is fine, but you recognize how important it is and are thus somewhat motivated to do it. And then you need to break those steps down into little enough chunks that you're more likely to complete them, you know? So for example, this is a trivial example. Perhaps you have to write a paper on a specific topic for school and you aren't particularly good at it. Maybe you could go to the library one day and just check it out. That might be sufficient. And then maybe you could go to the library, get a book and open it, look through it. And those would occur on separate days. Then perhaps you might sit down and read the first page of the book. And if you can't do that, the first paragraph requires you to bargain with yourself and determine the largest step you would take toward your goal. If you don't do it, you gradually reduce the steps until you find something you'd like to do.